Willett. It is, okay, I'm Larry Willett, and it is August 18th at about 9:05, 2022, and I'm calling to order this special meeting of the Home Inspector Licensing Board. Besides myself, Mark Champagne, Tim Needham, and Rich Kobalinski, board members are present. And I understand we have some feedback from regarding our revisions and some questions, I guess.
Right. So OPM reviewed these, and they have two concerns. I think one, I think I forwarded both of these to you all previously. But the first concern, I think, is the easiest to address, which is they'd like a definition for the instant hot water heaters, since they're being excluded from an inspection requirement. They think that the concern is that people will confuse instant hot water heaters that we're describing, which is, you know, as we know, the attachment to a sink where you get hot water for tea or a beverage, with the household plumbing, you know, with the tankless hot water heaters is what they're thinking might be a source of confusion. So I think if we come up with a definition for exactly what we're talking about in the instant hot water heaters, they'll be pleased with that, just so that no one's confused in the future.
Okay.
And then the second concern is that they're worried that the section at 2491.13, where we say that the operation of warning equipment
Right, so the
is exempted in the general exclusions. I'm sorry?
The audio is off.
Yeah, I'm not.
Everybody's you're broken up, Cynthia.
Okay, I'm gonna turn off my camera and see if that helps.
I can't.
Okay, just hold for a moment, please.
Verinda? Oh.
Someone is trying to sign in. Is that you, Mr. Kuzmic?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yep.
so I'm trying to promote you, but what's
Yep.
happening because you're signing in on the Zoom platform is causing some interference.
So what should I do?
You should click on the Zoom link and come in as an attendee, and I will promote you as a panelist.
All right, so close this out and go back to the agenda and start over.
Yes, and click on the Zoom link and come in as an attendee so I can promote you as a panelist.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Okay. So we may want to wait till Bob joins us, make sure that clears up the audio, or.
No, you can go ahead and proceed. He's dropped off so that he can rejoin appropriately, and I'll manage that from my end. Thank you.
All right, so Cynthia, we had, why don't you start again with regard to the instant water heater, because you were kind of breaking up during that as well.
Okay, so the concern, I'll leave my camera off, you know, maybe that'll help too. The concern with the instant hot water heaters is that they thought there might be some confusion with the exclusion of not having to inspect instant hot water heaters, which is how we've written it. But they thought that that would be confused with the tankless hot water heaters that, you know, supplies water to the entire house, where we're describing the instant hot water heater that's connected to the kitchen sink, where you can get, you know, hot water for tea, as we know.
Right.
So, you know, they thought that if we added a definition for exactly what an instant hot water heater is, that would clarify that. And I think that's the easy part for what we have to do today. But the second concern was where, I'll share the screen and pull it up in a second, but under 2491.13, where we've said that the inspector does not have to test or verify the operation of any warning equipment. There's a concern that if this is already required by the regs, which I don't believe it is, that what they don't want to see is a reduction in the protection for consumers, so that, you know, if we're exempting the operation of any warning equipment, if we're going to stick to that, we need to add a definition as to what that means, so that, you know, we're not reducing the protection that's provided by the amendment that we've made, which required the inspector to report on the equipment, whether or not they were able to test it, the age, and that kind of thing. So it kind of, their concern is that we're cutting back on the protection provided by the amendment. So if we're going to keep that section, we have to be very explicit as to what the operation of warning equipment means. So I'll share my screen and pull it up so that, we have it in front of us. Okay, can everybody see that?
I can see it, yep.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Sorry, whoever has the webinar recorded, can you take that box down? It's blocking. Oh, sorry, I got it. Never mind.
So in the definitions, if we want to, define instant hot water heater first, since I think that's pretty clear, this would be the area to add it if you all agree.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that hot water to the entire house would be considered domestic hot water. An instant water heater that we're talking about is a local component that is going to be, as you say, at a kitchen sink.
Would it help
I don't know.
to maybe describe the one that we're talking about, the one installed at the sink? Could we refer to that as maybe a convenience appliance, since it's really something that's used, like we were saying, to make a cup of tea or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not an essential need. So we could maybe use that as part of a definition too, whereas domestic hot water is an essential need to living in the house, where this add-on component is really not.
Oh,
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, Larry. I think, we're talking about something that's installed in a specific location and only serves that one spot, not the whole house.
Right. Means, okay, so instant hot water heater means a non-essential need component installed in a local area for specific convenience or something. I don't know.
I mean, are these instant hot water heaters specifically only ever installed by a kitchen sink or so, or, locally with a sink attached?
that's what normally I see them just at the kitchen sink. That's.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't see them really any other locations other than in a kitchen, but I mean, it could be, but this is where you see them when you do see them. But
Larry, I like the non-essential, I think non-essential convenience appliance installed in a specific location.
yeah. We want to write that, Cynthia, and just see if that satisfies.
I just don't want to create, I'd rather make it plain language. I don't want to create another term that's not defined. You know what I mean? Because we don't have anything else called a convenience
Okay.
item or appliance or something. So if it's, specific, if it's something that's attached to a sink, let's say that, so that it's super clear and we're not creating more definitions that need to clarify this definition. You know what I mean?
Is it possible to have the instant hot water fall under household appliances? Means kitchen, laundry, similar appliances, whether installed or freestanding, and then have the instant hot water fall under household appliance?
That would be.
That would satisfy the fact that we don't have to test it.
Right.
But it doesn't define it.
Okay.
Right, right.
This is Leslie O'Brien, sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking online at these and they're called instant hot water dispensers.
That's, yeah, okay, but then we have to, instead of
Okay.
water heater, it's a hot water dispenser.
Or
Okay.
faucets. I mean, that's what they're called when you look at these things online. I happen to have one. I
Right.
thought, what do I call this thing? And I always call it a faucet, but online they are called dispensers or faucets. So maybe maybe clarifying it that way, make
Yeah.
it that.
Instant hot water dispenser, yeah. Again, can we use, or do we want to still use something to show that it's a non-essential component? I mean, yes or no?
Well, then you're gonna have to define non-essential components, Larry, and you're gonna get on another
All right,
can of worms.
yeah,
I don't think we gotta be that wordy.
okay.
Means device installed at kitchen sink to provide instant hot water for beverages.
Well, okay,
Or it's a sink, you know,
at a sink, yeah, it
No.
doesn't, because it could be others.
Yeah, it could be.
it'd be another sink. And what was the rest of what you said? I'm sorry.
To provide hot water for beverages.
That is sink to provide water. I think that summarizes it.
All right, I'm
Does
okay with
anyone-
that. As long as that's clear in everyone's mind.
Okay, great. Okay.
Could that mean separate device?
Means
Oh, meaning
a
apart from the sink?
installed at a sink, a device, dispenser, yeah. I don't know. I don't know that we need to say separate, but we can.
Meaning to distinguish it from the regular faucet?
Yeah,
Well, the water doesn't come out of the regular faucet. It has its own tap that it comes out of.
right.
Right.
That's what we're saying, separate device.
Separate device. Or a separate dispenser even, but whatever.
Okay.
I think that
device-
covers, I think
yeah,
that does it.
covers-
Yeah, I agree. I think that does it.
Okay. All right, so that was easy. So the next one, here. 491. Is currently required. Okay, so they'd like us to, distinguish between testing the warning equipment, which is what's been added with the amendment here. Whether or not the inspector is able to test it, and the operation that we're excluding under section 13 here. Where under the general limitations, you don't have to report on the operation of warning equipment. So that if we don't define the operation of warning equipment, it can be read to undermine the section requiring the testing of warning equipment here.
Can you say that again?
So, in the amendment, we're saying that the inspector shall report on the testing, whether the inspector is able to test the warning equipment. But then under the general limitations and exclusions, we're excluding the need to report on the operation of any warning equipment. so that if we don't define what exactly this means, the operation of warning equipment, it looks like it's undermining the need to test and to report on whether we're able to test the warning equipment. So
Well, so
what's
there's
the
some-
difference between testing and operation?
Yeah, there's some conflict between those two words.
Right, right. And I think it just needs to be clarified on what we intend by excluding the operation of warning equipment as opposed to the testing of it. And, what I discussed with OPM was that, the intention is to say that, the operation of warning equipment can be attached to a larger alarm system that the inspector is not necessarily familiar with, doesn't have an operation manual for, so that you're not really able to report on the actual operation of warning equipment when you're not sure what it entails, because you're walking into a home, without a manual. So that's why, they preferred that we define the operation as opposed to testing, so that, you're not undercutting the requirement to test the warning equipment by excluding the operation of warning equipment.
Well, that's the whole point. I mean, I don't think it's required anywhere even in the original regs that we are required to test.
Well, there's really no way to test. It's, you're pushing that button, which is really just, it indicates that the warning alarm sound is functioning. It doesn't tell you if the detector is functioning.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. It doesn't tell you it's going to detect smoke. It tells you the alarm works.
Just tells you that the buzzer sound
Right.
is working.
Right.
The
Right.
problem with that, the wording that we have there, whether the inspector is able to test warning equipment, that's the wording out of that, the bill that passed, that started this whole issue.
Well, right. And that says the inspector is able, and that's not in the regs yet. That's what we're putting in, but
No, but that was part of that bill, Larry.
yeah, I understand that, but
Wording.
the original regs, the regs that are not amended yet, don't say that we have to test, alarm equipment.
I know that.
Yeah, but
the
I
reason-
don't know that OPM knows that. They said that there's a conflict in us testing and then not operating. That's how I understood their question. Maybe I misunderstood it. I don't know, but
No, that's correct. But the operation is also an amendment that we're making to this,
right.
to these regs here. So, that's why it came up, because we're amending to add the requirement to test required by that statute. But at the same time, we're subtracting,
No, again,
at
I
least the
just-
way that
Okay,
it's
so
perceived.
can we change 17 to the testing of any warning equipment?
No, because the statute required that, like what we have up here, this is the addition, this is the language straight out of the statute, as we know. So one of those requirements is whether the inspector is able to test. So we can't then, subtract that requirement in another section.
No, I think what Rich is saying is, we cannot change number 5, able
Mhm.
to test. But we can change whatever it was down there, number 14, to swap out operation and use test. I mean, because 17 isn't in the new law. The part above is. And so if we said, the testing of any warning equipment. See, it all boils down to the one above, number
Right.
16, and that's and the type of any warning equipment. We don't know what we're testing, and that's why, or we don't know what we're operating. So that's why we shouldn't be required to do it. We don't know what we're doing there. We don't know what type the warning equipment is, and that's why the operation follows that. We don't know what we're testing, so that's why we shouldn't be required to test it.
Right, we can't subtract from, we can't put it in section 10 where we have to do this, where, you know, we don't have a choice in this language,
Right,
we can't then subtract that requirement in another section. You know, if the requirement is that the inspector, whether to report, whether the inspector is able to test, we can't then say that the inspector is not required to test the warning equipment. When this is, you know, this is straight from the statute, and this is the reason for the amendment.
Well,
We can't then subtract that requirement.
well, the
well,
requirement is to report on whether the inspector is able. And you're unable to test because you don't know what you're testing. That's what we had discussed. We don't know whether it's an electric detector that's connected to the house. We don't know if it's part of a off-site alarm system. We don't know if it's battery. I mean, we just don't know what we're testing. And I mean, these are minimal regs, and guys do testing. If they want, they can. And all kinds of things happen. They've happened to me. They've happened to many guys.
all of us.
And so that's why, we shouldn't be required to operate these things. I've pressed a test button and the whole thing has fallen in my hands because it's been sitting up there for 10 years and nobody's done anything with it. It's all yellow and everything. There's just a number of reasons why we shouldn't be required to test. And I'm not sure if that's what, is this a committee, OPM or something or whatever, but, or this office, are they interpreting the new law to say that we should be testing? I guess that's my question. Is that their interpretation?
Not so much that we should be testing, but they want, I was explaining to him the difference between the operation, the testing, and the functionality, right? Because I think the concern is more that not so much whether you're able to test it, because if you're not able to test, you can say I wasn't able to test it and move on. But where I think the concern here, where we originally put in the operation of any warning equipment, is to distinguish between, whether or not you're able to test it and the actual operation of it and whether or not it actually functions. It's like three different things that we're talking about, because if we're testing, and just pressing a button and the button goes off, that's one thing. Then the operation of it is, how does it work? You may not know that. Most of the time, you probably won't know that walking into a house, sight unseen. And then, whether or not the equipment functions. And that's not even something, I think that's kind of subsumed within the operation of it, was whether or not it works. And it's not so much that they're requiring you to test it. It's that they want, if you're going to distinguish the operation of it, they want a definition on what that means. So that if the operation is, I don't know, if there's 3 steps to operate an alarm of some kind or warning equipment, if, you have to press a button, spin it, whatever, they want to be clear on what you mean by excluding the operation of warning equipment. Are you talking about you're not verifying whether or not it actually works, or are you not verifying how it works? Do you have to flip a switch, turn on something before it'll work? Like anything like that. That's more what they're looking for.
How about putting in the setting, instead of saying the operation, say determine whether the warning equipment is working properly?
Performance,
Is properly functioning, something like that?
performing as intended.
Okay.
Right.
I just have a question. If before the upper part says that we're not required to test it, or I'm sorry, it says there, are we able to test it?
Right.
Can't we just eliminate number 17 entirely?
No, because that's
Because-
part of the, I see what you're
No,
saying.
it's not.
So if we leave section, whether the inspector is able to test warning equipment, leave that, then that's it, just leave it. Why can't we take 17 right out of there? And then home inspectors themselves note that I was not able to test for the following reasons. I mean, why do we have to put in there the operation of warning equipment?
What if the guy does test it?
Well, that's his preference.
Well,
That's up to him.
but by
So,
putting in there, if you put down the warning equipment is working as, you know, as it is supposed to, he can't determine that by pressing the test button.
No.
And so this would cover him as well as the client.
Well, I think that, I mean, home inspectors, we all agree that we shouldn't be testing these. Now, if someone
Right.
wants to put upon themselves to test it, then, you know, that's, or any other warning equipment, that's up to them. But I'm just saying, why can't we just eliminate the operation of any warning equipment? What's keeping us from doing that? There's an issue of trying to reword this to fit in. Why don't we just eliminate if we don't need it?
Well, these,
Well,
I'm-
it's just reinforcing that it's something that an
not
inspector doesn't
required.
have to do.
Yeah.
Because if, you know,
It's not above it if we're able to or not, and we would
We're
just.
not
say-
able to see the whole thing here without scrolling, but we're at, all right, stop right there. We're at D. The inspector is not required to determine. So now let's go back down to 17. So the inspector is not required to determine. How about the function of any warning equipment? I mean, the office seems to be hung up on this word operation. Does the inspector is not required to determine the function of any warning equipment, the operation? Yeah, myself, I don't see the big deal. I think it's clear, but you know, I don't see where it's ambiguous or anything. But maybe I'm just missing something. But it seems operation is what the hangup is. So can we say something else other than the operation? I don't want to get in there and say the proper. I don't want to use the word proper, but the function. You know, does that help in any way? I mean, or is that the same thing? We're just, you know, they want to know what function means. I don't know.
Larry, I
Yeah.
think function may work, but performance is really the other part because
Performance,
there's no way for us to determine the performance of.
So
of
that's
those.
saying the inspector is not required to determine the performance of any warning equipment. I mean, it already says that, Cynthia, to determine. We're kind of saying that twice.
Yeah,
think
right. It's up-
Determine can
it's
be
up.
taken out.
get rid of the,
No, I think,
oh, okay, the performance.
yeah, determine the
Okay.
following and then the performance of any warning equipment. I don't know. Does that help? We don't have anyone from the office on the call here, right?
Is there a better word than performance for that?
No.
I don't know.
I think that says it because that's really,
Yeah,
you know, what we're talking about.
I think they both say it. I myself, I just,
Yeah,
you know,
So in saying the performance, what you're saying is, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you can test the warning equipment. You're not verifying that it will actually detect smoke,
that's right.
correct?
Yeah, right.
yeah,
I mean, we're saying by the new law that, you know, it's there or it's not there and how many there are and where they're generally located and,
Mhm.
but we're not required to ensure performance or something.
Right.
Again, myself, I don't
There's
see the
really, I
big
mean,
difference between performance and operation, but maybe that's just me. I don't know.
yeah, I don't think there's any way to really determine either of those.
Yeah. But again, the key thing I think that home inspectors are going to need to understand is that, you know, whether the inspector is able to test. Well, we are unable to test because we were unable to determine the type. We don't know what we're testing. And that's really why we shouldn't be required to do it. Now, again, if an inspector chooses to do some testing, well, that's up to them. But they shouldn't be required. And And so that's what we were trying to accomplish there by putting something into the limitations and exclusions.
Right.
I don't know. Do you think performance will
I-
do the trick?
Hi, I'm just, it's Leslie O'Brien again, sorry. Cynthia, do you think that conflicts with the underlying, with the statute?
What was that again?
I
What's
don't,
what's the conflict? Yeah.
I'm wondering if I understand that performance
I
and
don't see
operation
it as
are pretty much the
conflicting.
same thing. My concern is only that why this is being flagged is because the intent was to have, I'm not right or wrong, the intent was to have that, the fact that this is a functioning piece of equipment.
All right. So you think the
determined.
intent of the law is to have inspectors test the warning equipment?
That's why I want to go back and look at the statutory language, that's all,
Right.
because
Right.
if that's the intent, then obviously this language conflicts with the underlying statute, which,
I don't know if that would be the intent. Otherwise, why would it say the inspector is able? I mean, it should say the inspector should test.
right, I think that's why, Leslie, only, this language here that we're looking at right now is straight from the statute, and it's whether the, inspector is able to test it. And, I think that's normally understood, like, as everyone knows, you can press the button on the smoke detector,
right,
but that doesn't really truly confirm whether or not it's actually going to detect smoke. So I think the
right, which,
concern performance, because you can't really verify that.
right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if that's exactly what the statute, okay, so what you had was exactly what the statutory language, I haven't looked at the statutory language in a long time, so I apologize, but
Yeah.
that's what it said.
Yeah, section C is straight from the statute. D,
Right. Yeah, we had
was
talked
added.
about that. Yeah, we had
Well,
talked
then-
about that.
That's what it is then, okay, then I guess that's what we need to go back to OPM with. That would be my input.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because, earlier, Cynthia, you had mentioned that OPM thought we were kind of reducing the requirement because of the fact that we were already testing them or required to test them. And that's how I understood that OPM was interpreting it.
Right.
But I don't know, I had asked that, where did that come from? Because even in the regulations as they stand now, it doesn't say we have to test them. Their inspectors are required. It says they're not required. I mean,
Right.
they're
Right.
called alarm systems in the regs now and not warning equipment, but it specifically says that, inspectors are not required to test warning equipment or
Right.
alarm system.
Exactly right. And that wasn't necessarily his assessment. It was just a concern, that he raised to make sure that we're not doing that. But you're right, the current regs don't require any of this. So there's no reduction in the protection for consumers. It's more, I think that they thought those two sections were in conflict. But, I know that, it kind of sounds, the way that it was read by OPM, the word operation, I think will be seen differently than the word performance, honestly, because when I spoke with them.
I would take that as being different, both of them being different.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think the operation was seen more as, how does it function? You know what I mean? Or how do you turn it on or use it or something like that? But I think, if we distinguish with the word performance, I don't think it's unreasonable, I don't think it's unreasonable to make that distinction that you can't confirm that a warning equipment will actually work in an emergency or will actually detect smoke or carbon monoxide
Yeah,
when it's present. I don't think it's unreasonable to, permit that you can't verify that during the home inspection.
Right, yeah. Well, I think maybe we can submit that change and see if that helps them understand what we're, trying to say.
Right, right. I'm just looking over my notes again from my conversation with him, make sure we covered everything. Yep, I think we got it. I'll get back to them and hopefully, they'll be satisfied with it. And I can follow up either way and just let you all know where we stand with it.
Okay, okay. So if that takes us past the concerns of OPM, in review, I just wanted to bring up something else while we have, there's still some time here, but I did a review of the paperwork last night, just to get it back in my mind. And I came across the stuff that we're talking about with the interns and the supervisors. And I think, in my opinion, there's some more work that really needs to be done there. And I sent you a message, Cynthia, last night, and asking if there was, stuff that I just didn't have. And it turns out that I had everything that's up to date. But all right, so yeah, you've pulled up my concern. So this 491.27, it says no more than 2 home inspector interns may be under the direct or indirect supervision of a licensed home inspector at any one site. And if you scroll down, well, it's not going to be in these amendments now, but if you look down in the actual regulation, we have, let me just get it here. We have 28, which says 28D, 491.28D.
Mhm.
All right, there it is. And it's 28D says no more than 1 home inspector intern may be present during the direct supervision requirement at any one site. So one is saying 2 guys can be there, and one is saying only 1 guy can be there.
well, this one's saying direct. Now, what did the other one say?
Right.
The other one
That's
says direct and indirect,
here.
direct and indirect, or
Okay,
indirect.
yeah,
So
they
to
contradict.
me, there's a problem there in that 27, you could actually have 2 interns that are beyond the first 10 direct supervised inspections where the supervisor's there. They're beyond that. Let's say one of them is doing his 15th inspection and the other is doing his 20th. I interpret that to say that they could both go to a property without the supervisor and do the inspection. That's what that says to me. Now, maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. But if that's can happen by what this is saying, I don't know that we really want that to happen like that. So I just have some concerns about that. And I think there's stuff that we should further discuss. The other thing, I looked through the statutes that are named here, and I looked through our regs, and nowhere does it say that a client should be notified that the inspection is being done by an intern. And I think that's something a client should know. Perhaps he doesn't want his inspection to be done. He or she doesn't want his inspection to be done by an intern. He was referred to, Mr. Needham, and he's expecting Mr. Needham to do the inspection. Well, an intern shows up or 2 interns show up. The client should be notified that, is it okay that an intern is going to be doing your inspection? So those are a couple of things I had concerns about, and, you know, they got by our final version. I know we brought this up, but we didn't make any changes to it. And I just would like some, you know, input from guys and from, you know, you, Cynthia, and you, Leslie, you know, just what you think about that.
Well, Larry, with the fact that you can have one, even if you just had one intern under the indirect supervision, they can show up at a house and do a home inspection. And that's the way the reg, even if that's the way it read, only one, you still got the problem of an intern doing a home inspection by themselves with only 10 inspections under their belt. So what difference does it make if you have one or two? I understand why you're saying you want the homeowner to be notified or the home buyer to be notified, but does it matter if one intern or two show up? Since the law says that one, you know, we understood at least one which could show, or you can do unsupervised inspections after 10.
Right.
What
Right.
difference does it make if one or two show up? I have
Yeah, well,
I
I
have more
guess,
of a concern, like you said, that the buyer is not aware that the guy only has 11 inspections under his belt. And now he's inspecting my 4,000 square foot home.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, that's like a second item, really, whether or not the client should be informed so that he or she can agree or disagree. You know, I thought I was hiring you. I'd prefer that you do the job.
I mean, I think that's the main thing, whether one intern or two interns show up. I don't.
Well, the only thing about that is that we don't know. They're supposed to be keeping a log. We do have it covered that if only one guy, if two show up, only one guy can take the credit.
Right.
You know, so, but we don't know. We don't have, it's very loose. We don't have any audits of the logs. I mean, for all we know, both guys are taking credit. We don't know.
Right.
And they're not supposed to be doing that. But we don't know if one guy's doing half the house, half the systems, the other guy's doing the other half the systems and getting the job done and taking full credit. It's very loose there. We don't know about that. It just seems to me that could be cleaned up, and I just think a client should know and be able to have input on that, because maybe they don't want a new person inspecting their house, and they should have the right to say, geez, I prefer you. So
I think under that number 27A, I think that originally was the intent was that no more than 2 home inspector interns may be under the direct supervision of a licensed home inspector at any one time.
well, it doesn't say time, it says site.
On any one site, rather.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was, and that not the indirect.
Well, I don't know. I couldn't find anywhere in the statute or the regulations that say that a supervisor is capped at how many guys he can be supervising. We have some supervisors who have 4 guys that they're supervising.
Right, but on site, they can't have more than 2.
Right.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just think there's a conflict there between saying 2 and then saying 1. So I think that ought to be cleaned up somehow. And do we want to add?
So
Go ahead, Cynthia.
is the goal to remove the or indirect? To just remove this section and keep it under the direct supervision of a licensed home inspector in any one site?
Well, so we say no more than 2 home inspector interns, maybe under the indirect, maybe under the direct supervision.
Yeah.
Yep. But again, that doesn't change down below where it says only 1. That's D.
That's D.
I think we want to change
So this would
2
be
to
2.
1. 27A should say 1, in my opinion.
This should be reduced to one.
Yeah,
There's guys that are going in with 2 or 3.
well, they're definitely not supposed to be going with 3. It says they can go with 2. But again, we have no oversight. We've never
I know, I
really
mean,
done any.
I've heard, I mean, I don't know, I can't verify it.
Yeah.
But I've heard of cases where guys going with 3 or 4, and they're all doing separate things.
Harry, what's the problem with 2 home inspector interns going to be direct supervision at a one site?
I don't see any problem with that under direct supervision.
Yeah, what's your concern with that?
My concern is that the consumer, I mean, the way it's written is that the home inspector intern is supposed to conduct the inspection, but the supervisor is going to be there. He's not going to be completely silent. He's going to be training during
Right.
these 10 inspections. So does he open up the electric panel and look at what he looks at and then closes it up? All right, when he's by himself, that's what he does. Now he's got 1 or 2 interns with him, and he's
Mhm.
going to be saying, well, you know, here we're taking this panel cover. You want to be careful and do it this way, not maybe this way. This is what we're looking for in here. So you're doing some training, and you're doing it on the client's dime.
Right.
And so that could lengthen the inspection. They're doing training during that direct thing. And so if there's 2 guys, I just don't know if the consumer is being slighted in some way. I don't know that I would want to be the client and have 2 guys there and a supervisor, and the supervisor's telling them, well, don't, you should be doing it this way, and we got to make sure you take a note here about,
Okay.
I don't know. It just seems, I don't know. It
Good
just
point.
seems like you're on the dime of the client, and
Mhm.
you're training guys, and they didn't even know they were coming. I don't know. Just doesn't. It seems like it should be smoothed out some way better.
Well, how
We're
else
not going to do
would
it
you,
now, but it seems like we should look at it while
Larry,
we're in this
Larry, how else
process.
you're gonna train them?
Well, he's
Exactly
just
right.
saying
How else
that
you going to
one.
train them? But if it's limited to 1, that's going to help. But
No,
yeah,
you
I mean,
bring up a
how
good
else
point.
you going to train them?
Good
I
point.
agree. The supervisor's not silent and just watching the guy.
No, but that second guy's getting input too. I mean, he's gaining knowledge by being there. But he can't take credit for the inspection. So it just means he's gonna go on more inspections under direct supervision.
Yeah, maybe if they're doing the logs the way they're supposed to. We don't know that. We never see the logs. I think they should be audited from time to time on a random basis, but we don't see the logs. As in anybody, no, the board could do that, but we've never done it. We don't know what they're doing. I don't know.
I think you gotta leave 2. I think there's no problem with two people, but it should be under the direct, not indirect.
Well, then down below, you got to change to the 1 to 2.
No,
Why not? They conflict to me. I mean, they don't conflict.
No, because one's direct and one's indirect. Well, it should be, I should say. It's not listed like that, but.
Let's go down.
If this is going to be indirect supervision, then there's only 1 on site. So as you said, they're not dividing up the house and not.
Well,
Right.
D is saying direct. No more than 1 may be present during direct supervision.
Yeah, that should be I would say that would be indirect.
indirect.
Because
Okay.
you wouldn't, my personal opinion, you wouldn't
Yeah.
want 2 interns inspecting a home because the other intern may miss something. And meanwhile, 1 intern is doing the report and taking the responsibility and the credit for it.
Well, not only that, he doesn't, if you got 1 person on it, you're gonna cover all the bases. If you got 2 people on it, it's easy for 1 guy to think the other guy did it, and he didn't.
That's what I just said, yeah.
Yeah, well,
So that, I think we put that indirect on that one and get rid of indirect on the upper one, and I think we straightened it out.
Okay, so no more than one home inspector, yeah.
Sorry, I'll go back. Wait, where'd it go? Okay.
You gotta go up.
Okay,
Yeah,
you gotta go up, but that, so you're gonna leave on D, no more than one home inspector intern may be present during the indirect supervision requirement on any site.
Okay,
And then on the other one, you get rid of indirect. And
I'll go back and
No more
keep this
than-
at 2.
no more than 2,
Mhm,
leave 2.
right. Oh, I'll go back and fix this.
Okay,
okay,
Track changes is getting on my nerves. But yeah, I'll keep that as 2.
so 2 interns may be under the direct
direct.
supervision,
yeah.
okay. Okay,
That makes sense.
You want to put something in there that the buyer has to be notified of this? I mean, that could be cumbersome.
That's, how do,
I do. I want to put something in, but you know, I'm only one person, so,
where do we, yeah, but where do we put it?
well, it's either gonna be maybe maybe it should be the supervisor's requirement. I don't
That's what I'm
know.
wondering.
I don't know who sets up the job, you know? Does the supervisor set up the jobs? I've
Well-
never been a supervisor.
Well, no matter what, the supervisor is always responsible. So I think the supervisor should be notifying the client beforehand.
Well, what if you have an answering service that does all this for you?
Hmm,
Right,
These big companies that have, 10 inspectors, they have an answering service that handles the booking of the inspections. What if it was part of their contract?
Well, I know, but what, shouldn't the people know beforehand?
Yeah.
Because maybe they don't want an intern doing their inspection.
Right.
well,
I don't know how you address that.
well, I think we can address it, but it's where do you put it?
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, this section dictates everything that the supervising licensed home inspector,
Right.
shall do.
Yeah.
It would be, we've added the notification about the termination of the relationship. We can
Right.
add that, if that's what we're going to do, we can add it somewhere in here.
Yeah, can we make it,
How do you enforce something like this?
I don't know.
well, yeah. Well, how are we enforcing any of what their requirements are? Not,
That's correct. Yeah.
we don't have any oversight. I
Right.
think we maybe should, some random audits from time to time of their log, make sure, the interns don't have the same property on their log, that kind of thing, but we're not doing that, but it seems like we could add number 10 and say, prior to the inspection, the supervisor shall notify the client. Let's see, the inspection, or can we say the inspection company? Should notify the client that the home inspection will be conducted by an intern with a valid permit or something, I don't know, but.
Now you're just referring to if an intern goes by themselves.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know.
well, why not? I mean, I don't think the person's gonna care if you show up with an intern, as long as you're doing the inspection and he's being trained.
So what's wrong with telling them?
Well, it's just time consuming. I mean, if you got these people, you have these companies doing, 10 inspections a day.
Yeah,
They got 5 interns. They got to know every day. They got to notify 5 different clients that they got interns coming out.
I don't know about that. I mean, how many supervisors do they have? These,
Well, unfortunately, Larry, and I mentioned this once before, you have someone who's a supervisor and you end up going out with another licensed inspector.
yeah.
And that's
Well,
your supervisor for the day.
Well, again, this just is pointing to some loose ends in this that I think we as a board should try to clean up.
Okay, I agree with you, but I know it happens. I know there's companies out there that, you know,
Well,
have
I mean,
five or
again,
six
this is,
inspectors, and the supervisor who's on the, you know, who signed off is never goes on the inspection. He sends them out with the licensed inspector.
yeah, well, that to me shouldn't happen. I mean, so,
Well, that's
I-
that can happen if, as long as that intern is under indirect supervision.
well, indirect, yeah. But the direct supervision is supposed to be
The first 10,
supervised
but
by the
after the,
supervisor.
but
Okay.
after the first 10,
Mhm.
he can go on site with any licensed
Yeah,
home
yeah,
inspector.
he can. Yeah, we're talking about the direct part.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a matter of, I just think the consumer should know what's going on, whether it's direct or indirect. You know, who's coming?
Well, would it be possible to put something like this in the standards that we provide to the client prior to the inspection?
Well, there is on that sign off sheet, there is, whether it's an intern or inspector.
There is?
Yeah. I don't have one in front of
I
me.
mean, the
because I have-
inspection disclosure form.
Yeah,
No, I'm talking about the Department of Consumer Protection Concerns Home Inspection, the one that we have to send out or give to the client. Is it possible to put it in there? Because there's, I mean, they received this prior to the inspection to read. I don't give it to the day of.
Well, the home inspection disclosure form that we're required to give to every client does not say who's doing the inspection.
Right.
I have it right in front of me. You know, it just says the Department of Consumer Protection license and regulates all home inspectors in the state of Connecticut. If you have complaints or questions concerning the licensee's work, please call or email DCP at, then they have the complaint center and the information. And then it says, please sign and return a copy of this disclosure form as proof of receipt. And so then, you know, the client is supposed to sign it at the property location. The home inspector signs it. It's got his license number. No information about who's doing the job, about interns. This is about the guy doing the job,
okay.
licensed home inspector.
I thought there was 2 spots there, one for intern and one for supervisor.
No,
It's been
I
over.
I think
8
prior
months
to
since I
inspection,
seen. So,
shall notify the client whether a home inspection is to be performed by a home inspector intern. I think number 10 is okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know that we need to specify between indirect or direct. You know, I just think as a consumer, I think that'd be good information to know, and I should have that capability of saying, well, I'd prefer, you know, your 30 years of experience to the intern's 15th inspection. You know, so I want you to do it.
yeah,
I mean, the consumer maybe should have that option. And maybe number 10 does that. The only thing is, in terms of the scheduling by you know, an office manager or something, do we want to say prior to inspection, the home inspector supervisor or the company shall notify the client? So that gives a little more room, saying that, you know, someone who's doing the scheduling can say that an intern is being scheduled for this job, and we just want you to know that. I mean, do we want to say that?
I think what we have power over is the home inspector supervisor, not the company.
right.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I think if we're going to put this into regs, we can only control so much. And this section, you know, is particularly written for the home inspector supervisor.
I mean,
Okay,
if the
Um,
guy, if the intern's going out by himself, he's under that inspector he's under a supervisor
right, okay.
assigned to somebody, so that supervisor is the one that should be notifying the client, is my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
because you know,
Yeah, well, I can understand what Cynthia, what you're saying. And so we leave it at that. And now all right, so we've got 9. Sign a notification. The thing number 7, I've never seen a notification to the board that a supervisor has an intern. Doesn't that say that sign a notification to the board of the supervision? Has the board ever been notified?
no.
I mean, I don't know, maybe Bob knows. I don't know. I've been on, Rich, you've been on the board a long time. I've never seen any
I've
kinds
been
of,
on since the beginning, and
yeah, there's
we've
never
never
been
been
a,
notified ever.
we've never been notified. I mean, that's a question. And then the other thing, I'm sure it says up here somewhere that the supervisor is responsible for the intern, not the fact that, you know, I've got another licensed guy, he's going with you. I'm busy today.
Yeah, here,
Um,
accepts a legal responsibility for all the home inspection work performed by an intern.
how about the direct part? Where does it, where it defines direct? Does that specify?
Yeah.
Well, maybe that, wait a minute, each property inspector. Required. Okay. Yeah, there must be some, all right, direct supervision means the supervising licensed home inspector must physically be present and witness. Now, that's not saying somebody else who happens to have a license within the company. That's saying who set up this, who's supervising. I'm the supervisor. I'm supposed to be there, not somebody else who maybe just got their license, who knows? But I
Well,
don't know.
no,
I mean, it's there, and the only way it's there. So if they violate it and we don't know, well, we
Hey.
don't know.
look at A. While performing inspection work at home inspection interns shall be subject to supervision by a home inspector license pursuant to the general status. Okay, so in other words, that means that an intern can be supervised by another home inspector.
No, it doesn't mean that. It means it's pursuant to the statute 492A, and 492A further defines the supervisor. That part of it's covered.
Okay,
That's in the statute. That was 492A. Department shall issue to each applicant. That's it. I'm just looking at it quickly. Oh, wait a minute, now here. In 492B, let me just read this to you. Prior to performing a home inspection, each licensee shall inform the client in writing that the licensee's work is subject to regulation by the department. Oh, okay, that's our disclosure that we just were talking about. All right. Yeah, it further describes the duties of the supervisor. And then there's 492, 493 as well is the statute. But it's clear the supervisor is the guy who's supposed to be supervising, not somebody else.
okay.
For the first 10.
So I guess it's there. I mean, it's covered. Now, whether guys are doing it, well, something we don't know. But we do have it. It means that it's the supervising licensed home inspector must be physically present. So maybe we don't need to, change anything unless we decide to add something about, the board has.
May, what did you just say, Larry?
I'm saying that it's covered, the direct supervision, by the definition of direct supervision under 491.28.
Right, direct supervision.
Direct supervision, right. So that's what we're talking about. The
Okay,
supervising inspector must be present,
right.
and that's what we're concerned with. We know indirect, the guy can be on his own or he can be with one other guy.
With another licensed supervisor, or licensed inspector, he can be with.
Yeah, but that's indirect.
Right, well, yeah, okay, all right,
Yeah.
yes. That's the definition, that's the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, we're defining
I'm not
direct.
arguing with you there, I'm just
No,
saying,
no,
after the direct supervised inspections, the guy can have any inspector with him. It's,
that's right. That's right. Yeah. No, we're talking about direct supervision. And
right,
what we were saying before is that companies are sending just someone who has a license to supervise an intern, but he or she is not the supervisor. And
yeah,
that-
but if he's done their indirect,
Yes.
if he has his 10 inspections under his belt.
he doesn't. That's the point. He doesn't. It's direct supervision. The first 10,
All right, all right.
first 10, the supervisor's supposed to be there. We have it covered. I mean, it's
Right.
covered. We don't know that they're doing it, but we don't know what they're doing. So,
But I'm thinking a lot of cases, the guy's got his 10 under his belt and he's there with a different.
that's fine.
inspector.
We have no control over that. Great. He can go by himself.
I
He's
ain't arguing with
indirect.
you, Larry.
He's
I'm not ar-
indirect.
I'm not arguing with you.
No, I'm just saying it's direct. We're talking about direct. So
All right. We gotta
But
get
do we have
going
to-
here. I got
do we
a time
have to,
commitment.
if the board wanted to conduct a random audit, does that have to be in our regulations or?
I think the department has the ability to do that, but I can double check. I'm not sure off the
Alright.
top of my head.
Can we cover this at our September meeting? Cause I've got to get going.
Yeah, it's after 10. Well, I think we've made the changes we wanted to make, didn't we? We got the number of guys straightened out and we covered that.
Yeah, I think so. I think we have what OPM, wanted to address. I'll fix this and remove the deletion. And yeah, I think we're good to go. If there's another issue, like you said, we can discuss it at the next meeting, but I'm going to follow up with OPM today.
Okay. Okay. Is everyone okay with that? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay.
Bye.
Motion passed to adjourn. Unless anyone has anything else, I think we're all set, right?
Enjoy the rest of the summer, guys.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Okay,
Take care.
okay.